with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many.
As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should have been impeached?
First of all, I have to say, as a businessman, I get along with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many of the people in the audience. And by the way, I'm a self-funder. I have my wife and I have my son. That's all I have. I don't have this. So let me just tell you, I get along with everybody, which is my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, it took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
So
George Bush made a mistake. We can make mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right.
The question is really what Trump is going to show up to the debate. This, not caring about the crowd that's booing him, he goes all in on Jeb Bush on this notion that the Iraq War was basically a lie, a tragedy. Not just a tragedy, a catastrophe. Because ultimately you're talking about 1 million people dying in that and because of that lie. Trump is right here. And don't take Trump's word for it, take Nancy Pelosi's word for it when she was in an interview and she basically said, yeah, we knew that George Bush was lying. But she didn't necessarily want to impeach because she didn't think it would do the country well. Yes, she's okay with impeaching Trump. But Bush, going into a country, snuffing out 1 million people, not to mention entirely destabilizing that particular area, spending 4,000, 5,000 American lives to do it. And yeah, $7 trillion in blood and treasure. To call it a mistake is a magnificently Herculean euphemism. Mistake is not what you call it. You screw up and accidentally call somebody the wrong name, last name. That's a mistake. You are having sex with your girlfriend and you accidentally call her the name of somebody else. That's a really bad mistake. And you're going to probably hurt for that mistake when she knees you square in the nuts. Getting 1 million people killed is something else. It's something else. Donald Trump is going to have 2 major hurdles when he gets into the debate tomorrow. Joe Biden, and the question becomes, can he take advantage of him? And that's what I want to talk about. What Trump, A, which Trump is going to show up? B, depending on the Trump that shows up, how is he going to deal with Joe Biden? Because ultimately, the question becomes, what is Joe Biden going to do when he gets into the debate? Is this going to be a referendum on Trump, in which case Joe Biden just attacks Trump the whole debate? Or is this going to be some level of aspirational politics where he tries to use who Trump is, what Trump has done over the course of the election, in this kind of euphoric way of this is what we're going to do, we're going to deal with that problem and that problem and that problem. Doubtful of the second one. There may be some stuff he weaves in, but I'm doubtful of that second one. The question becomes, what does this debate look like? Because I honestly don't have a clear picture in my head. But I would say that there are 2 things that Donald Trump has to deal with. And the question becomes, can Joe Biden take advantage? Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal and Patreon. Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. Let's go back to that debate. I'm trying to give you this notion, or trying to refresh myself in regards to what to expect with Donald Trump on the debate stage. I'm going to subvert all of this, though, despite showing you these. And honestly, this is a pretty decent back and forth with Clinton and Trump. Clinton is trying to deflect from the information that were in her emails. Some of that stuff dealing with the Clinton Global Initiative, honestly, she should have been prosecuted. From the standpoint of Donald Trump is trying to make it a big deal. Let's take a watch. Let's take a look at Trump for a moment. Again, just trying to get an idea on what it was like for Trump when he debated Clinton.
A foreign power is working so hard to influence the outcome of the election. And believe me, they're not doing it to get me elected. They're doing it to try to influence the election for Donald Trump. Now, maybe because he has praised Putin, maybe because he says he agrees with a lot of what Putin wants to do, maybe because he wants to do business in Moscow. I don't know the reasons, but we deserve answers. And we should demand that Donald release all of his tax returns so that people can see what are the entanglements and the financial relationships
we're going to get to that later.
That he has
Secretary
with
Clinton,
Russians and
you're out
other
of time.
foreign powers.
Well, I think I should
Mr.
respond
Trump.
because it's so ridiculous. Look, now she's blaming, she got caught in a total lie. Her papers went out to all her friends at the banks, Goldman Sachs and everybody else, and she said things, WikiLeaks, that just came out. And she lied. Now she's blaming the lie on the late, great Abraham Lincoln. That's one that I haven't. Okay, Honest Abe. Honest Abe never lied. That's the good thing. That's the big difference between Abraham Lincoln and you. That's a big, big difference. We're talking about some.
That is brutal. That is the difference between Abraham Lincoln and you. So again, it's going to come across how and what Trump is going to show up. First point, Trump has two hurdles. One, presidents. There's let's say, curse on presidents. After being a president for 3 years, and those presidents, for the most part, have dealt with people who were mainly yes men, who presidential authority, and that president, for the most part, has had an air of royalty around him. Now, just like in Black Panther, when it was time to figure out who was going to be in power, Black Panther had to get rid of the chemical, the super soldier serum of sorts, in order to fight his combatant. Now, this is something similar to our presidential debates. The president, after being president for 3 years, and after being basically dealing with yes men, and being able to do this, and being able to do that, and having all of this authority, all of a sudden the president gives it up, cedes it, and descends from the governmental edifice of the presidential authority and gets into a chamber to fight so the public can make its choice. Now, in the same way that Panther was weaker, so is the president. But the president is weaker for a different reason. The president is weaker because for the first time in a very long time, the president is going to get hit in the face by another opponent. Meaning he's standing mano a mano with somebody that is trying to take him apart. And in trying to take him apart, is doing so in a way where the president is now unfamiliar with the situation because of what he's been doing for the last 3 years. Now, go back and look at Obama's first debate with Romney. You can see the same thing. Obama had a difficult time dealing with Romney, especially the lying that Romney was putting out in that particular debate. He did not fare all that well. It's something to do with the president having all of these people around him recognizing him as the president and now getting into a contest with a person that is not, and is trying to take him apart and take his record apart. It's one thing for the New York Times to do it. It's one thing for a talk show to do it. It's one thing for the media and everything else to be howling about it on CNN and whatnot. It's another thing, though, for this to be a contest of wits, intelligence, and your ability to basically get across to the audience or project something that they will latch onto and cling onto. Even if it's a race to the bottom, helter-skelter, low turnout, but I win, last man standing on a nuclear bomb, that type of stuff. We're going to see it. That's his first problem. I think his first problem is being president in and of itself and going into a debate immediately after the presidential stuff. Yes, you have to do it, but yes, even if you're prepping for it, it's something different. It's something different. I could be wrong in that, but we'll see. Rustiness, I guess you can call it. The second part to this of Trump's issue is Trump himself. Everything that Trump has done over the course of his time as president, one disaster, one failure after the next. Now, the question becomes, what does Joe Biden bring up in this? Is it going to be foreign policy failures like Venezuela and Iran? And I'm saying failures from the standpoint of his explicit interest and want, and the catastrophe in and of itself that it caused. Meaning pulling out the JCPOA and the havoc and everything else that came from that, the murdering of Soleimani, the attacks in Syria on Iranian institutions and whatnot. Like, this is a dramatic escalation in regards to what could have been there in regards to some level of peace between the two countries. Does Joe Biden bring that stuff up? Does Joe Biden stick with domestic policy in regards to, having all of those workers not getting paid when Donald Trump decided that he wanted to build a wall? Is he going to attack him for the build a wall stuff in and of itself? Is he going to attack him for the number of people that are dead from COVID, from the number of people, for that matter, that are unemployed, that are being thrown out of their homes? What angle is Joe Biden going to use to attack the many failures of this particular president? And let's also be very clear. The papers that came out in the New York Times report, that's magnificently coincidental that it came out day before the debate. A September surprise. Now, the catch becomes, does that matter? And is that something that Joe Biden can effectively make a case against Trump about? Now, understand what I mean. Are there people that are looking at the debate and looking at Trump and saying, I have a question mark on him? Or are they looking at the debate and saying, yeah, that's my guy? Meaning, bringing up the tax stuff, does it have the bang for the buck that you think it may have? The liberal crowd will eat it up. The CNN crowd will eat it up. In fact, you would have Democrats loving it, think it's the greatest thing on the planet. But that's them, and they already had a predilection against Trump. So does the tax stuff matter if it's being brought up in a debate? Now, the catch becomes, how many people out there haven't voted yet or haven't made the decision to vote and don't necessarily know which one they're voting for? Meaning, how many of these people are really independent voters that are watching this? Or is this a canned exercise? Now, all of the things that Trump has done are up for debate and ridicule. All of the consequences, be it environmental, be it the human costs, those things are up also for ridicule and an attack. Now, Trump needs to be able to get out of this without being skinned alive by his own issues. Now, what I mean by that is, he's not debating Bernie Sanders, so fair enough. And for that matter, he's not even debating Obama. Obama was a pretty decent debater. But he is basically debating Joe Biden, who didn't win any of the debates. And not just didn't win it, didn't even look good in any of those debates. So the person with the ability to prosecute this is not necessarily the person with the greatest vigor and the greatest intellect to do the job. Either way, Donald Trump still has to get out of this without getting deboned by his own policies. And I'm saying being deboned in the sense that there may be people out there that watch and say, oh my God, I can't believe he did that, and didn't necessarily know. I don't know how many people those are. How many ever people those are. They may be out there. Just very basic point. He needs to get out of this without being deboned. And you have to assume that there's a probability of people who hasn't decided, just based on probabilistic notions. In which case, you need to get out of this without looking bad. Go back and look at the Tim Kaine debate versus versus Pence. And in that debate, people wondered, how is Pence going to get out of that debate with all of the stuff that Donald Trump has said up to that point? And at the end of that debate, people looked at it and said, he might have even won. Why? He basically shook his head and deflected anything that came his way that Donald Trump said. Now, this is a bit different because this is Trump himself. I'm just making the point that Trump needs to be able to get out of this without looking horrific. And beyond getting out of this without looking necessarily bad, It has to be more than that. Meaning he needs to come out of this looking good, or at the very least being able to make Biden look bad. Why am I saying that? When Trump was running against Clinton, Clinton can make an argument about all sorts of problems that may come up, that Trump is incompetent, that Trump was working with the Russians. Oh, and by the way, taxes are out by the New York Times, not the Russia stuff that Hillary Clinton was talking about and Democrats were talking about. So let's put a pin in that one. But beyond that point, this is not conceptual at this point. This is a president who's in office, who has 30 million people out of a job, who has 30 million people without health care, who is actively, right now, trying to get rid of that health care in the middle of a pandemic, that has fires and floods while simultaneously saying he doesn't necessarily believe in climate change or any of that stuff, and people being thrown out of their homes. That doesn't even touch the riots, the cities that are on fire, not because of an environmental thing, but because of human policies and human action. One president, all of these disasters, and this is going into November. That looks bad. That looks like a difficult load to be able to carry, especially when 200,000 people have just died from COVID-19 and that number is supposed to go up by Christmas to 300,000. That looks bad. This is not conceptual at this point. This is one of those things where you need to be able to endure attacks on you because of this stuff, but still come out looking as if you were the stronger, more dominant, more presidential figure. And when I say presidential in this very specific case, I mean for Trump, dominant, alpha male. You need to be able to control the debate. If you can't control the debate and you become subjected to the things that you've done, you are going to have problems at the end of this debate. Trump needs all three of these debates, and he needs these debates to go well, because he needs to change the conversation that is taking place right now from either the New York Times or the COVID-19 thing or the number of people that are dead or the riots, etc., into, oh my God, Trump won. Or, oh my God, Trump did well. Or, hey, did you hear what Trump said? Or here's this soundbite. Or here's this argument that Trump made that worked. You need something to resonate that exceeds this election, this debate. And you don't need to necessarily win for the CNN crowd. You don't even necessarily need to win for the MSNBC crowd. You're never going to win those people. You need to win in the way that people expect you to win, and in the way that people who voted for you to win. You need to reinvigorate those people to go out and make that vote for Trump in the way that they felt when they made that first vote for Donald Trump. That's what Trump needs to do. He needs to take all advantage that he can of these debates, because he needs something to change the conversation and keep the conversation going up until the election. And if you have a stunning debate performance, or if your opponent looks horrendously bad, that may work in your favor. From a standpoint of Joe Biden needs to have the ability to take advantage of this stuff. Meaning, you need to either do one or two things, and I would argue both. An aspirational message in regards to all of the crises and everything else that avail you in order to get across to the public, I am the guy that's going to deal with this stuff. But you also need an ability to frame and put Trump at the center of all of those failures that you need to deal with. I'm going to fix what this guy failed and fouled up. All right, guys, I'm going to end this here. Like, share, and subscribe. There's one more that I want to do, so I'll be right back.